to chat.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Honey, We Need to Chat. Oh, so good.
Not even planned.
We didn't even plan that. My throat is very croaky today. I've had a bout of sickness and we're about to do this episode. Good one. My name is Blair. I am one of the co-hosts here on the Honey We Need to Chat, and this is my wife, Amy, the other co-host of the Honey We Need to Chat podcast. This is the podcast all about the importance of communication in your relationship. So happy to have you here. If you are new, thank you so much for joining us today. This is just such a great space for you to grow with us. We're growing with so many people around Australia and America,
all over the world.
All over the world, actually.
Yeah.
We looked at the other day, which is amazing. We're just growing with a lot of other individuals and couples in our ability to communicate with each other, in our relationships, preparing for the relationships ahead. We're also learning a lot about ourselves. How do we receive information so that we can be better receiving stuff and communication, right? So that's what we're all about. So thank you so much for joining. And if you are a regular, we want to have you back. Thank you for joining us again. We would love to start off by saying, look, if you get anything from this today, please just share, like, subscribe.
Yeah.
That is going to go a huge way in supporting this podcast, reaching more people. It's going to really just support us as well, just being able to have that time to invest in this space. So all you need to do is like, share, and subscribe, and it goes a huge way, guys. So thank you so much for just taking 2 minutes right now just to quickly click those buttons. That'd be fantastic. By you joining us today tells us a lot about you. It tells us that you're intentional about your relationship. It tells us that you're intentional about your growth in your relationship. And you also understand the importance of communication in your relationship. So thank you so much for joining. Just to recap really quickly, we are currently in a series on mental load. We did an episode way back on mental load, which has been our number one write-in topic about how it's just giving people language in regards to knowing what they're feeling. So they're feeling something, but they haven't had the language to put to it, to explain it to their partner. That's just been an amazing resource for people. So please go check out that episode on mental load.
We'll link that in as well.
Yep. They'll be in the show notes. So what is mental load? You might be asking. Well, mental load is the invisible mental labor of managing a household and family life, right? So it's the stuff that you don't really see, and it does. And we've definitely experienced that.
Yeah.
And we've really had to have been working through that together as a couple, and for me to better understand it and for you to better be able to voice it and communicate that.
Yeah.
This week's episode is going to be a little bit different. So we've been talking about what mental load is. We have a greater understanding of communicating that. But what if you're the person that's been receiving that communication about the mental load of the relationship? What if you're that person? So we're going to be going through a lot of Reddit write-ins. There's a lot of partners sharing their honest thoughts about mental load, and some of these stories are going to be frustrating. Some are going to be surprising, but all of them are real. And we love that.
Part of what we love doing on this podcast is not just having a one-sided perspective on things, or not just having a black and white kind of response that's really like, cut it off, stick to your boundaries at all costs. We really like to explore the layers that sit behind people's relationships and the dynamics that play out in their relationships. And very, very few times are things black and white, if ever. Yeah. And they're often very layered, very complex, and very, I guess, changeable based on people's circumstances. And so one thing we do really like to do on this podcast is explore what might be happening. So today's episode is to present the receiver end of this conversation and show a little bit of what might be going on for them, either a bit of their story or a little bit of how they're perceiving this conversation about mental load and what like kind of thoughts and filter they've put on this conversation. So it's a different angle, and it's not to say, none of these episodes is to say that this side is right, this side is wrong, because that's not how these things pan out. It's more just to help us kind of stretch our understanding of how people navigate these things so that we can best navigate it within our relationship in a constructive way. And it's also a little bit different today because some of these are just Reddit stories, but some of these are comments. So more like a forum-based conversation that happened on Reddit from someone asking in with some questions. So I have some comments back from different people. I also want to say as well, I really spent a lot of time trying to find Reddit stories, and I was very much trying to find a range of stories from the different gender of partners being the receiver of this conversation. However, I have to be really honest, maybe 1 in every 20 conversations about mental load was the man carrying the mental load. So it was really hard to find any kind of other perspective. Apologies ahead of time for that, because we obviously know that these things are generalized and it's not always going to pan out that way. We've seen that pan out in our relationship. There have been times where one of us has been carrying a significantly more heavy burden of mental load than the others. And that's just changed with our circumstances and what's going on. But that's a little note ahead of time. That doesn't mean that this never happens the opposite way around. It's just that these stories and these comments came from this perspective. And I think they're an important conversation for us to have, and not to ignore the fact that this is usually how it pans out in relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something really important as we go into these conversations. You know, females that are listening, like if you're a female and listening, you might be the one that's unaware of the mental load that's happening within your relationship. It could be the case, right? Like we're seeing, you know, 1 in 20, you were saying, like, and that's a rough, that's a guess measurement, but still, like, typically it's the other way around, but it doesn't mean that it's not. So it's so important. And for the men that are out there too, like, that if you're a man and you're listening, we need to actually take that into consideration. Okay. When we come into this conversation, just soften your heart a little bit here, because sometimes when we can hear those sorts of things, we can tighten up and put our walls up and sort of like, I'm going to prove you wrong. Just come at it with a soft perspective, okay? Because we're not accusing, we're not trying to point the finger. We're trying to strengthen our relationship. And even if this has been something that's been recommended for you to listen to, for you to learn more about it, just come at it from, it's not an accusation. It's an opportunity for growth, all right? And it's opportunity to create greater understanding in a conversation you might already be having.
Yeah, on every side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so if you haven't heard our other episodes about mental load, I do recommend checking them out first before you dive further into this one. This is going to explore it a little bit further, and we're just going to kind of help us understand where some people might be coming from and what perspectives might be playing into this. Cool. Let's dive in.
Let's dive.
Okay, so this first one was written in by a man on Reddit, asking for insight from other men on on how they've navigated this in their relationships. So it's titled, Men of Reddit, what are your thoughts on the concept of mental load? I can't really gel with the concept. While my one-man household isn't a good comparison, I still have a life I need to organize. And you know what? I've got a system. A few of them, in fact. A to-do list on Google Calendar, various spreadsheets for money and fitness progress, a page on Notion for my cleaning schedule. I don't doubt that the tasks of child rearing and running a home are unfairly thrust upon women in many cases, but is this mental load really any different to just worrying about random stuff you have to do? So that was the first question, which I thought it was funny that it was written in by a man in a single household. He just lives by himself. But good question to be exploring.
Well, and he says one man household isn't a good comparison. Like, does that mean he's the only man in the house?
Yeah, I think he's just by himself. Oh. I don't think he's even in a relationship. Oh. My one-man household.
I read it as like...
There's only one man.
There's only one man, but there's multiple females.
Maybe.
But I don't know.
Well, we'll find out.
Words.
Anyway, so the first comment I wanted to highlight here is from someone titled Apprehensive Cut. You can't really choose your name on Reddit either, so I don't think these mean anything. Don't ask me. We do a lot of Reddit, but I'm not a Reddit pro, but I've never figured out how to choose our names. So, and this is a male. So he's writing in and says, my wife had to schedule the children's activities, doctor and dental appointments, shopping list, get the laundry done, cleaning, bathing the younger children, all the things that occur on a day-to-day basis for a busy household. I was gone a lot and worked long hours. Usually by the time I got home, it was too late to handle things like calling for a plumber, electrician, etc. If something like that happened, my wife would text me and then brush her hands clean of the matter. I often don't have access to my phone for hours, nor would I be able to handle the matter if I did. And by the time I got home after midnight, it would be too late. A minor household emergency happens at noon. I'm not due until 1 a.m. Nothing is going to get done until the next day or the day after if I'm lucky. So many times I had to tell her that she's an adult too, and she's a homeowner, and that she needs to deal with this stuff. So a little problem doesn't become a major problem because I'm unable to deal with it because of my absence. For example, we had a very nice, fully loaded leather interior automobile. A neighborhood kid threw a rock and busted the rear windshield. There was now no rear windshield in this car, and it's pouring outside. We have full coverage of this kind of expensive automobile. Neighborhood kid knocks on our door to let her know. All she does is text me that someone broke a window in the car. That's it. And she's done with the issue. It's now my problem. By the time I see the text, a few hours have passed. I asked her to send me a photo. It is a photo of the entire window gone. I asked her what she did about this. She said, I texted you. Like, really? That's it? I tell her to call the police, call the insurance company. After she does this, it's like walking a toddler through the process. I find out she's set up an appointment for the next day. The company will do an emergency measure and cover the window with a clear film to keep the rain. She never thought to ask. I tell her she needs to go outside, get a tarp from the garage and cover the car. We have older teenage kids at home who can help, but no one will do anything without me telling her to get it done. I have to explain to her that the busted window is like a $200 to $300 problem. The water damage from pouring rain will make it $2,000 water damage problem. I shouldn't have to explain this to an adult in their 50s. So this is this guy's comment, which took a real turn from where I thought he was heading.
Same. I actually had to reread that a little bit. I was like, oh, that's different to where you were going, where I thought you were going. I see how this could be frustrating for him at the same time. Like I don't, but at the same time, I'm like, well, man, that's a bit harsh. I could see if it's pouring rain and you haven't like got a tarp and stuff like that. Like, yeah, I could see the stress of that while you're at work, like his situation. And he doesn't tell us about his situation at work at the time.
At work and that kind of thing. Yeah,
like I get the frustration, and that's the thing is, it's not excusing the tenseness of situations as well. Like this is a tense situation. Your car window's just been smashed. Emotions are high in general,
and it's going to cost a lot of money.
It's going to cost a lot of money, but to give his wife a break here as well, though, it's like, why do you expect someone just to know that stuff? Like, why do you expect that it's going to be a $2,000 problem now? Like, you can't expect that. There's stuff that I know, like, that just comes more sense to me than does to you, and vice versa. Just, again, on a lot based on our experiences and what we've been brought up with. There's been a lot of, like, lawn mowing things that you just haven't known because you didn't have those experiences growing up. I know that because of experiences. So for me to expect that of you, I think would be a little bit harsh. For me, I look at this and like, this is a tense situation though. Like I wouldn't just put it down to mental load. I would put it down to the stress of the situation as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's a few layers to this. One is he's just listed everything she has to do and he's not very present. So he's listed all the things that she carries mentally that he just can't do. Yeah. It's funny to me because he's just said, look at all these things she does, but there's this one area where she really doesn't carry the mental. She needs me to talk her through it.
Like a toddler. Like it's just so harsh, man. Yeah. What I was a little bit confused about though, like, and this is just not our area and our life stage at the moment though, is like there's teenagers in the house. Like that, I'm just like, oh,
that's a whole other
At first, layer. Our experience of mental load and the family mental load stuff is we have young kids, right? And that's like, there's so much more dependency on us for those sorts of things. Yeah, I don't know. I found that a
funny part. But the other thing I think that's really interesting is he's frustrated. He has to talk her through it, and she won't kind of explore it, which I can understand as well. But that's exactly what happens in the reverse of this. That's like 90% of these conversations are people saying, I have to tell my partner what to do. And that's what we talked about with the groceries. Like, yes, they'll do it, but I have to tell them what to do. Yep. And so it's interesting to observe that he's frustrated by having to talk her through it, this thing that she leaves to him. And I think that's the same experience that the people on the other end that carry a lot of those day-to-day tasks feel like. I have to talk them through how to call the doctor or and get the kid in, or I have to talk them through how to feed the kids or where their clothes are, a uniform, because I carry it all the time and I know it. And that's a frustrating thing to have to do for your partner. So it's interesting to see him navigate that from the other side.
So this isn't us saying like, oh no, like he still does more mental load than her. When that's not the picture that we're painting, we're just helping to understand what mental load is. And it's like both parties can feel it. He's feeling it here. What I don't appreciate is the way that he's talking about it. It's like the language is harsh. At the same time, if we do, last episode we spoke about the importance of reverse roles, right? Like and experiencing the other person's side for a time. Okay, let's put a scenario in this situation here, like a hypothetical. Okay, so she's now for some reason gone away on a business trip, right? Hypothetically, she's away on a business trip now. Now he needs to take care of all the stuff while she's gone. Like she's away. Now he needs to do that. How much would he be relying on her for all of these things that she's doing? And that's the difference. I think it's providing language to the situation and where the stress or the burnout might be coming from. And then it's also then helping us be like, cool, all right, well, you're feeling mental load. This is you tapping out. I'm going to take it from here and we're going to work on this together. So this isn't a reoccurring pattern, or then we can analyze, is this just a once-off? Is it reoccurring? So it's just really important, I think, to, don't just look at one situation or one person like, you're doing the mental load. It's like, well, no. you both do it to each other at times, right? And it's just giving you guys language.
Well, everyone does mental load. And the other thing that is really important with this conversation is that mental load's never going to be 50-50. And that's not, I don't think that's ever the goal, even though I did see lots of people talking about that on Reddit last night. Like, can it ever be 50-50? I don't think it's 50-50. I think it's just not, unless you have exactly the same job and you do exactly the same tasks in the home, like equally shared. And even then it still wouldn't, because people function differently. They've got different things that they find important and things that they'll value and that kind of thing. It's not going to be 50-50. So it's not about making it equal. It's about being aware of what goes on. And it's about these attitudes that we hear coming through on both sides, on all of the sides, that it's not just a matter of like, oh, they're like a toddler. Like that kind of attitude only builds to resentment. So if that's happening, something's not sitting right. Yeah. And that needs to be in that conversation.
And if you're listening to this as well and you try and now count all the different times that the other person's done mental load, listen to our episode on scorekeeping.
Yeah.
You know, it's really important as well. This isn't intended for ammo for you to fire at each other. Yeah. This is to help facilitate a healthy conversation with greater understanding of the situation.
Yeah. And I think this is a good example of how you can fire ammo all day long and it's not ever going to, there's not going to be any conclusion. No one's going to win that battle. There might be some really clear, obvious examples of like, you really need to pick up some slack here.
Yeah.
But you're not going to win that battle because this guy's just been like, yeah, she does all of these things. And then he's like, but this one thing. And he's like, shut that. And that's what really weighs on him. But the other thing that's interesting is she doesn't know how to do these things. She doesn't do them. She doesn't know how to do them. She has to be talked through them like a toddler. And I think that's part of the mental load issue is we have to really assess, what have we let our partners learn? And I think that might come up in some of these, in the rest of the stuff we're going to talk about today, but like, have we let them own these areas? Like, have we let them learn them? Have we let them own these areas? And also then they have to take up the opportunity of learning as well. So you can't make someone learn something, but there is a little bit of an ownership perspective of it as well. And I think this happens a lot with child related mental load, because especially in the early days, mums tend to have their heads around what's going on. And that's even just in the structures just that we go into as becoming parents, like around the hospitals.
It's the structure of the health system and everything.
Yeah.
Feeds to mum. And that's a big part of what we're working on too in the health system with our work outside the podcast is we're working with the health systems to address dads as much as mums, right? Yeah. So you go through, are you about to have a baby? Like all the focus will be on mum and baby. There's no inclusion of the dad. There's
there's like little kind of like
pass off comments
that include the dad, but it's not like an education for the dad. It's not a focused education.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like we get put into this sort of like a sort of backseat sort of a position from the get-go. From the very beginning, we get put into that position. And what we're doing, what we're working on is actually putting dad right beside mum to help with that mental load, to help with that preparation.
Not to help, to just be in that mental load.
For dad, help with that preparation for dad to know how to better support mum and baby, like, because otherwise there's nothing there. And then that goes through, like mum is the one that's typically more home than dad when the baby's first born. Right. You know, so because you just you got to feed, you got to do all these things. Typically, mum is more home than dad in the beginning. So now you're going to learn all these other things involved with that.
As a mum.
And like my opportunities to learn that were less because you might be getting home visits or you might have appointments. I'm not there. I'm working.
And even repetition. Exactly. Every day.
But the biggest thing that we did was that we were intentional in that time and we were including me, you know, and we were intentional with that teamwork. And I just don't like it. Like, I don't know. I just get really icky about this sort of language where he says it's like explaining it to a toddler. It's really bugging me.
Yeah, because it's so patronizing.
It's so patronizing, but it's so like disjointed. You know, it's so not we're in this together.
Yeah.
It's so like you or, you know. Like,
well, it's resentment.
Yeah.
And that's
cool.
That's what I'm trying to highlight as well is like, if we don't help foster times for our partner to learn. So like the scenario you've just played out, mums so often just have that happen. Like it just kind of unfolds naturally. It's awkward at first for lots of women. It's really uncomfortable learning these things, but we learn quickly because we're doing it all the time. If we are too like possessive of doing it for the baby, not kind of really letting the dad have that space to learn, also like too controlling about how it needs to be done, all of these things, then we're not helping give them opportunity to learn. They also have the ownership of stepping up in that space. But yeah, instead of being like, they're like a toddler, why are you not looking at it like, this is my partner that I want to get them understanding these things? Like when you taught me to mow the lawn, it wasn't like, this is a kid that I'm teaching to mow the lawn. It was like, my partner's got no idea how to mow the lawn, but I'm going to help her learn how to mow the lawn so that when and if she needs to, which is not very often, she can. And it's not a new thing to her. And I think as well, when it comes to mental load, it's like we've said many times, it's not just the task. It's not just who's doing the task. It's who's carrying the load of it. And that's what becomes so exhausting is just carrying the details, the everything that goes into it, the context, all of the understanding and information and stuff. And so when this is something that obviously, whether they've decided it verbally and together in a nice way, or it's just happened through their like unspoken contracts that have happened in their relationship, this is one of his tasks.
Yeah.
That she's now
like
having to take on for him.
It sounds like an unspoken contract.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, another episode that we've done.
Yeah.
Sounds like an unspoken contract. The mental load has fallen onto him and he's struggling, and you can see it like in the way that he's talking.
Yeah.
So and that's valid. The struggle of mental load is hard. So his reaction is understandable. But yeah, again, we're just trying to get more tools in our toolkit rather than ammo in our ammo kit.
Yeah, but the mental side, like for her to not have that mental side in her head, if it's his task that they've decided is his task, shouldn't be the exhausting part. Like if that needs to shift, obviously he doesn't sound happy with it. So maybe it needs to shift. Maybe they need to have a conversation and she needs to carry some of that mental stuff. But for her to have her mental stuff that she carries for her tasks and then not carry the mental load of this task, but need to step in for him because it's a very random situation that's happened. I think that's fine. Like I don't think that everyone needs to carry all the mental load for every task, especially if she's trying to relieve hers, she's set that aside for him to deal with. And as frustrating as that is, he is going to have to step her through things like that. And I think the same needs to be done in reverse. Like if you've taken on a task and that's what you've agreed in your relationship to do, it's going to be hard for the other partner to just pick that up without having that transition period and that conversation. You will have that mental load that you need to either hand over and teach and like help them with, or recognize that in this instance, I'm carrying the mental side. They might do the task for me. All right. So the next comment is from Deleted. So this person on the same question, which was, what do we think about this mental load thing? This person wrote in and said, I posted this in the r/parenting thread, and it turned into a very messy poo-throwing fest of wives commenting massive lists of their husband's deficiencies. Some were probably very valid, but one common theme I saw over easily 100 comments were things that really felt like optional martyrdom. Lots of comments about remembering what size my child wears and remembering what the next doctor appointment is, and trying not to forget to order Valentine's Day cards for the classroom. So many things that are easily solved by just using Google Calendars and Amazon, and things that literally occur once a year and it's optional, but listed as though there are relentless daily burdens. Again, some concepts are very valid. Heard from tons of women who somehow have husbands who play Xbox 8 hours a day and wait for their dinner to be delivered to them while their wives also carrying a screaming toddler. If that's you, then not a nice word. You're giving us all a bad name. It seemed like a lot of the mental load they cited were optional problems like thinking about which color jacket matches their daughter's shoes. I have a household of 6, my own business. I do all our taxes, pay all our bills, do all the home and vehicle maintenance and repairs, coach youth sports, and do 80% of the chores and schedule and coordinate most doctor and dentist appointments. And I'd never say the mental load is unbearable and an issue. I just get stuff done as part of daily life and go about my day. I also don't put things on my mental load list that I'm personally opting into, like what color mug my son will drink out every day, or what card I should give their 3rd grade teacher for Appreciation Day. Those things don't really matter. So this person is saying basically that in this other thread they're a part of, a lot of the comments they were seeing about what mental load were optional things people chose to put on themselves and were not actually like daily burdens that were fair kind of to be putting on their partner, not carrying. So like things like what a matching jacket to kids' shoes, which honestly I've never in my entire life ever considered that, except for maybe at weddings. Other people are much better at that stuff than I am, rather than the daily kind of weight of things, which is like the chores around the house or the doctor's appointments and that sort of thing. And so they were kind of saying a majority of the mental load conversation that from their perspective is stuff that they don't need to take on themselves, which I think is an interesting concept.
That is. And I think it sounds like a few things. First of all, it sounds like unspoken contracts, like, wives, because you mentioned wives were writing in on that, had a specific expectation of values. right? Like, so, you know, the shoes and the jacket matching, Valentine's Day, the whatever else. I think this is a bigger conversation as well, because it's what's wrapped up with those things, and do we have this expectation that we both have the same value, or is that actually an agreed upon value and that we've been discussing and working on? Because if there are expectations that have never been discussed, well, that's kind of unfair to put that out there as something like, you're not taking care of my mental load. You're putting that mental load on yourself. Like, you are putting that mental load on yourself. If it's an area of value to you and you do communicate that and we are on the same page there, sometimes it's even just helping out the other person, even if the values don't align. Yeah. It's still supporting the other person. I think it just comes down to the conversation. But that is a very interesting perspective, though, of the amount of people writing in and putting all these non-critical things to the list.
We've spoken before about how when these things start to build, everything gets pulled into it. And so when we've had things that we're wrestling with, I find myself increasingly irritated by everything kind of thing until I've raised it and we've talked about it. And then it's like all those little things that I thought it was like this massive list of things just kind of into the air. And I do feel like potentially this is what happens with mental load as well, for a couple of reasons. One being, if those core things and that daily kind of burden of basically survival in a household is out of balance or isn't understood and recognized and then made space for, then I can understand how then everything, you'd be like listing everything, like they didn't even put matching socks on, or they didn't even all these other things that really, when it comes down to it, wouldn't be the biggest issue for you.
Yeah.
But if you're feeling burnt out, it's really easy to just get to this point where your resentment's building, your scorekeeping's building, and everything's going into that list, including things that don't really matter.
There was two things that stood out to me with this comment. And I think it's actually a really, really interesting comment that he's put here. Two things that stood out were, one, we didn't see the lists that they were putting up. So I wonder if these were some of the items that they put on the list, but there were some core things on that list as well. And like you said, if the core things aren't getting done, then the resentment builds and all these things aren't getting done, right? So they can build up. The second thing is I do feel like, and it's a personality thing. I'm not sure if it's a gender thing or a wiring thing. I don't know what, but like, you will be way more concerned about people's optics than I will. So, for example, they're teachers, right? Like, so if our kids have to wear the same socks, don't get me started on the socks. The socks, right, you'll be more stressed about that. I'll be like, well, if the kids don't get the right socks and they get in trouble, that's the kid's problem. Like, they've got to learn that themselves. But for you, it's this whole other whole other scenario playing out that doesn't naturally come to my mind. Where I think the trap lies is for me to dismiss your thing and then for you to put that on me. You know, that's where the trap lies. I think the healthier way of that is navigating through that and having a conversation through that. It's like, all right, cool. Well, it's not just about the socks. It's about, all right, if the kids get in trouble and you've got this scenario in place and you've got this scenario in place, it builds on other stuff. So having that greater understanding of, and it's, you know, it can sound exhausting. It can sound exhausting going through all these different things that you discuss, but that's the point, right? Like, as we keep growing and you keep having these conversations, it's not that you just have a conversation once and now your communication's perfect and your perfect relationship. It's ongoing. Yeah. You keep doing this stuff. But they're the two things that stood out to me. He mentioned as well, like a blue cup. Like, would my kid drink out of a blue cup? Okay. It's a blue cup. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal about the blue cup. But what happens if the blue cup isn't provided, right? And it's like, for you, I remember we would do this. I can't remember what it was, but I know we've been in some scenarios where I'm like, oh, we'll stuff it. Like, it's fine. We've got something else. We've got another cup or something. I'm just going to stay on the cup theme because I can't remember exactly our scenario. And what I didn't realize, though, I was like, all right, if I didn't provide the blue cup, X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, 4 scenarios will follow. And that would then fall back onto your mental load. Yeah. So it's not necessarily about the cup. It's about all the things that are tied to that cup. Yeah. And I just don't get that picture. So again, that's the importance of the conversation. And when it's tied around school and children, again, mums are typically more likely to have that information because of that involvement. You know, if the dad is like, he's running the business, he's doing all these other things, that makes sense. Yeah. So all the things that it sounds like that are being listed, other than Valentine's Day, and I want to get to that in a minute, are kid related. There's a lot of kid related things, and that's where I think we need to have some understanding too. Final part of the rant, Valentine's Day.
It says, which card should I give their third grade teacher for Appreciation Day?
Yeah, I think what stands out to me there is like, well, who's usually the one to go see the teacher? as well. Like, what does all the other parents do? Who's the one that typically goes to the teacher? If that's the mum in this scenario, then I can understand it. I can picture you in that and be like, I just need you to get this card. I'm going to go see them. Everyone else has done that. If I'm the only one that hasn't done that, and it's just asking for help, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that play into this. One is just because one partner says, this is my mental load, this is what I'm carrying, does not mean the other partner then has to say, yep, I'll carry all of that mental load for you, like in that task or in that sphere. And we've spoken about this with me because I do get quite anxious and I'm very perfectionistic. And I'm sure there are times where I project I'm like, absolutely, definitely there's times where I project my perfectionism or my like level of what I think is okay for something onto you when you're doing a task. But for the most part, like especially the anxiety things, I can't expect you to function at the same level that my anxieties would be functioning. No. So I wouldn't expect you to overly like intrusive thoughts of everything that could go wrong and then like try and avoid them, because it's not yours and it's not fair and it's not necessary. And I don't even think it's healthy for myself. So I would not expect you to pick up when I'm in a nice headspace. I don't expect you to pick up a task to that level. But like you said before, if you just disregarded my way of navigating these things as if it was silly, or you refused to kind of be curious about it, or refused to I have had experiences with like almost like a refusal, not from you, a refusal to do the thing that I'm nervous about because I'm nervous about it. Yeah. And I just find that really upsetting. Yeah. I don't think it's loving.
No.
And so I think if you refused to be curious about what goes on for your partner, something's off there. I don't think it's fair for you to just have to take somebody's whole level of navigating these things. And we're going to dive into that to some extent in the next story as well, because that doesn't mean you have to do it that way. So some of these things don't need to be done the way that they want them to be done. And they don't need to be carried by the person that doesn't think that they're important. But to be unwilling to understand why they want it that way is probably the part that sits uncomfortably with me. And like you said, with what cup they use and what that kind of trickles on to effect, there's times where you're so right. Like with a kid, it's so different too, because yes, it should just work nice and evenly and beautifully. But there are times where one thing will trigger something else, and then it'll trigger something else. And then as the parent that looks after them regularly, that parent might have gotten to the point where they're like, I cannot be bothered with this conversation anymore. So I'm only ever going to give this kid the blue mug. And again, doesn't mean that other partner has to like somehow jump on board with where that level of processing and history and understanding is. But for them to not validate it and not kind of see it as, even if they choose not to do it when they're the ones spending time with the kids, that's fine. But because they then reap the consequences of it to some extent. But just to kind of have this refusal or like a rebellious attitude towards it, that's what kind of doesn't feel nice in that story. The other thing too is we've spoken about in the last episode how you've taken on lunches for the kids, and you have this whole like thing worked out for them, like because you love them and you love making them feel like you understand them. And there's little intricacies that make it really special. And it's nice to do that for people that you love. It's nice to not just get the bare minimum done and to actually be like, I know that they like this, so I'm going to love on them and do this where I can, where it's reasonable. But it's also like if I step in and do lunches, I don't know all your intricacies, and you wouldn't expect me to just know that because I haven't been doing them that often. So you could either tell me and I can do that, or I'm just going to do lunches the way that I know how to do lunches. And I think that's where the mismatch would come in, is if you are expecting me to just know that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
It wouldn't be nice.
You were asking me the other day, like, because I think I was getting behind on getting ready for the day and the other week, and you asked like, oh, do you want me to do lunches? I'm like, oh, we can do it together because it's like it's a bit involved, and it was like, because I knew you couldn't do what I do because you just don't know you haven't been doing it, and that process of us doing it together, that sped up time, and it was good. It was like we still were able to provide the kids what they usually have and whatever else, and it was good. It was a good practice.
And I don't know if I took on lunches now, I don't think I would necessarily navigate it the same way. Like I don't think I would learn it the same way. I learn it differently. It's just it's just different.
Yeah. It's because something that we've, because I remember when we were dating, because we were doing that internship together and we're working on the same youth program together, and it was interesting because I was getting frustrated that you weren't operating the same way that I operate. you know?
Yeah.
And what we came to realize over time, though, is he still did a really good job. Like it still came out really, really good, but it was different. And it wasn't the matter that I valued the program more or anything else like that. It's just we operated different, and your value, your appreciation for the youth and the program was great, but your section that you would prioritize was over a different section to me, right? And that was great. That was fine. There was nothing wrong with that. But I had this expectation that you should have the same values as mine. You liked the same thing as me, and you wanted to show it the same way as me. And that was something that we had to learn early on. It's different. Your appreciation is still the same. Your love for them was still the same, but the way that you show that is different.
It's different, yeah.
And that's good. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And I had to get over it.
Yeah, it's the same as with our work. So like when I set up my website, when I set up any of our websites or social media, I get like hyper fixated on it, and I love doing it for hours and hours and just getting it looking nice. And like I'll spend more time on that than I will on strategy or like whatever. Flip side for you, like you are like, stop doing that. Cannot spend more than 10 minutes on that. And from my perspective, I'm like, it'll look so messy. But then you'll have a strategy that'll get us going forward. And then I won't have any strategy. I was like, well, it's got a really good website. And so it's the same sort of thing. I will never function like you and you'll never function like me. Doesn't mean that any way is right or wrong. Does mean that both ways will get different results in some ways, but also you're tackling the same topic just from different perspectives. And it's the same thing with parenting. It's the same thing with household chores. It's the same thing with values. You're not going to get it the exact same way, and it's going to play out. You have to have the freedom to be yourself in that thing. If you're refusing to enter into that space, that's different. If it's becoming a resentment thing, that's unhealthy as well. But I think when you can have an appreciation for how you function differently, it's really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're in this scenario and you're seeing this like list of mental load that's building and building, but you're like, it's just not valid. The best thing, which we say all the time, is just to have curiosity with each other. Instead of, no, I'm not going to care about what shoes I put with the jacket. Like, I'm not going to do that. Instead of just having that hardline thing, be like, why is it so important to you that the right jacket goes with the right shoes for our 3-year-old? And having that conversation doesn't mean you take it on, but it means you understand each other better.
Yeah. And if that gets brought up to you, I think the answer should be better than, because it looks good.
Oh,
you know,
100%.
you need to have be willing to go on that journey with the person that's asked you as well, right? Like, so it's a commitment from both sides, an attitude of curiosity from one side to understand why you like the jacket with the blue shoes, but then also that ability to be able to commit to the other person. Like, yeah, cool. All right. Well, this obviously isn't in your wheelhouse or your focus. So let me help you understand my focus and my value.
And that you're free to be worried about what you're worried about.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at mental load, you need to be fair in recognizing not everything that takes up space in your head is going to be put on you by the other person, or is going to be made that way because the other person's not carrying that. Some of it is just stuff that you value and stuff that you're opting into, like he said, in this optional martyrdom. Anyway. So yeah, that's an interesting perspective, and I think important when you're navigating these conversations. Last story. This is a different story, different thread. This is called Hot Take: Carrying the Mental Load. I'm not really sure where to put this, as it's more of an event than anything else, but I'm really sick and tired of hearing women complain about men not carrying the mental load when they are completely and totally unwilling to give them the space to do so. If you want your partner to take on the mental load, that means being willing to let go of it yourself. I'm not going to care for the kids exactly how you would, and that's okay. I might do breakfast later, eat lunch out, push their naps earlier later, have a more flexible schedule, etc. Instead, it seems like women spend their time chasing their partners around when they've taken the lead, supervising everything they do with the kids and trying to correct them anytime they don't do something exactly as they would. Then later they're complaining about how they would never get a break from the mental load. Even more frustrating, if you point this out, the response is often basically that they won't survive because the husband is so incapable. That is far from the truth, and most dads I know have easily managed when their wife has been out of town. Did a bath get skipped here and there? Sure, but everyone is happy, healthy, and having a good time. So this is what we were talking about a little bit, that people need to be able to learn, and they need to be able to own the task within what they deem as appropriate. And without learning, I mean, this is such a basic statement. Without learning, you're never going to learn, and you're never going to own it. He pointed out in here that might do breakfast later, eat lunch out, push their naps earlier or later, and have a more flexible schedule. I understand when you have figured out, like we just said in the previous story, what works for your kids to not lose their mind. So like pushing naps can be not good.
Yeah, it can be exactly what we said before.
Yeah.
What's the on-flow effect of that decision you've made, right? And who's the main person with the kids? So for you to be like, I'm going to do it differently, it's fine, and they're going to push you out their naps and whatever else, and then that's on the Sunday, and then on the Monday you go to work, and then the kids all like ratty because you pushed out the nap on the day before. It's just you're putting it on the person. So you've got to be able to. It's a two-way thing. Like, yes, you need to give the dad the space to be able to learn and to grow, and not even just space, but like do that together. But at the same time, guys, like, you got to think through the ongoing effects and stuff like that.
Yeah. But then on the flip side of that again is that until the parent that's learning has experienced what the consequences are for those things, like pushing a nap or having breakfast too late or whatever it is, until they've kind of pushed through and been like, oh, that's why, then it's only going to ever be the one partner saying, no, don't do that. And they'll be like, oh, whatever, I'm just doing what you've been telling me. So there is still benefit in just letting them learn. Like if it's there, if you've given it to them and they're trying to take it, just letting them do it that way, as hard as that might be, helps, because it's just going to mean that later down the track, they've got a better understanding of that.
Yeah. You need to be very careful in this scenario too, right? So he's saying that it's not him and his partner that are experiencing this, and he's just saying that there are people like this. So, so hypothetically, you're in a situation, the situation that comes to my mind is a hypothetical one, but a real one is mum might be chasing dads around and be like, you can't do that, I've got to like micromanage and I've got to do this sort of stuff. How old's the baby, right? How old's the kid in this scenario? If it's a baby, is mum suffering from postnatal depression? Just want to put that out there. The other thing too, if the man is in this space too, is he suffering from postnatal depression? It's a real thing to be aware of. Postnatal depression aside, where is their mental state? You know what I mean? Like, so to look at the action alone is not going to be an accurate representation of what there's going to be the full picture of what's going on. You need to have that attitude of curiosity, look beyond the action and dig deeper into the scenario, what's going on in that person in general, in life. Like, how is that person going in general, not just a situation? Because I think we can hold too many situations like this as face value of like, oh, I'm trying to step up, but, you won't let me. And it's, you're doing this action and whatever else. And it's like, all right, but why? Amy used to run this session. It was called the 5 Whys. It was the most frustrating and annoying exercise, but it was so rich, right? It was so powerful. And essentially what it was would be asking the question, like, why are you running this youth program, right? So you ask that simple question, why are you asking that youth program? They write down their answer, and then you ask the question, why? Why did you give that answer? And then they write down the answer of that why. And you do it 5 times, and it's extremely infuriating. But this is a good exercise to do, especially if you're struggling to verbalize your situation or verbalize your value or verbalize your anxiety around, your partner taking on the kids or whatever else, because it helps you just to stop and just to really, really reflect and get down to the nitty gritty of the situation. Don't look at the situation as face value. Dig deeper and do it in a supporting way, not as a expectation or as a you're failing way.
Yeah, if we want our partners and our relationship to thrive and grow and become stronger and stronger down the track, we need to have that as a value when we're navigating these things, regardless of what side or perspective of any of these topics we're coming from. Wanting the best for our partner and wanting our relationship to be stronger and having curiosity are all like things that will help you succeed regardless. If those are filters you've got, those things will help you move forward regardless of what you're navigating. You want your partner to pick up more slack in terms of some of the mental load that you're carrying. You need to let them learn. If you're finding your partner's repeating this conversation about how they've got mental load, you need to be curious about what's going on for them. And it's not about one person being slapped on the hand and the other person not. And I think that's where these conversations kind of lose focus sometimes. It can become this echo chamber, especially on threads like this, where it's like everyone's just listing all the things that their partner does horribly and they never pick up, and they're just like dropped all these things and all these things they have to carry for them. And you become like this frenzied echo chamber of agreeing with each other and egging each other on. But the reality is we want our relationships to be stronger. We want to be happier together. We want to be a better team together. We want the best for each other. And we really should want our partner to succeed at being the best partner they can be, as well as us succeed at being the best partner we can be. So if that's our goal, then there's stuff that needs to shift in attitude and stuff that needs to shift in how you communicate about these things. And hopefully some of these stories have given a little bit of perspective on how people that are receiving this conversation of mental load might be navigating them, or what kind of things might be going through their head when they're hearing these things from their partners, or they're hearing things from the trends going around being talked about online and that kind of thing. This might be some of their concerns. So hopefully it's helped stretch a little bit of that understanding of what might be going on, and also given a bit of a perspective of what might be being balanced on both sides. We're going to continue talking about mental load over the next few weeks, and we're hoping to bring some different perspectives like this to just kind of get a bigger picture of what's going on, because it's not easy, simple, clear cut kind of thing. It's a complicated process that you can see progress in. 100% you can see progress. So thanks for being with us today, guys.
Thanks, guys.
That's Reddit stories.
That's a good one.
Mental load Reddit stories. We'll chat to you guys soon.
Good chat.